Welcome back to the Backwards History Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Will, here with my co-host, Kevin. Say hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
Shut up, Kevin.
I guess I'll just sit back and keep drinking on this beer.
Wouldn't be Sam Adams now, would it?
No, it would not.
Well, our subject is...
That's right.
Before we get into that, I just want to tell you to like, share, subscribe, rate, comment, all that fun stuff. And don't forget to go check out Mike Ramsey Music. And also, we're still doing our 1-year anniversary contest. So just email us at backwardshistorypodcast@gmail.com. And we'll send you over the rules for the contest. And we'll be announcing that on our 50th episode. We may even do a little YouTube announcement of the winners.
Fingers crossed.
Stay tuned for that. Maybe even a Backwards History fireside chats.
Foreshadowing.
Right. So yeah, a couple weeks ago, if you were listening, we did an episode on Patrick Henry, one of our very, very influential founding fathers. Mm-hmm. And we decided we wanted to do another one. We may or may not keep this trend going, but we felt it appropriate regardless. And today, in case you didn't catch that, we're going to be talking about Samuel Adams.
That's right.
The cousin, or second cousin, of the second president of the United States, Mr. John Adams. But some might argue that Samuel was actually more influential than his more well-known, highly titled cousin.
Yeah, that's an appropriate way to put it.
I'm going to let Kevin go ahead and get this started.
Yes, we are talking about founding father Samuel Adams. Now, to address the elephant in the room, the connection between him and the modern day beer company or brewery, Samuel Adams was from Boston. Samuel Adams beer is made in Boston, so that's why they decided to go with his name as the namesake for the company. So there's really no direct connection. Samuel Adams did inherit a brewery from his father, but was very unsuccessful in that venture. So he does have ties to brewing, but he wasn't all that great at it. So maybe not the best name to tag onto your beer company, but hey, they've been around for 30 some odd years. It must be doing something right.
Well, technically, he didn't inherit a brewery. To be more precise, he inherited a mash house, which, if you know anything about brewing, mash is used to brew. But that's just a split hair. They still did it, regardless of whether that was their main function or not.
Yes, semantics aside, no. But Samuel Adams, a founding father, as Will said, second cousin to our second president, John Adams. And he does share many of the same qualities with Patrick Henry, whom we discussed in a previous episode, and that he was very influential, but in different ways. Whereas Patrick Henry was more of a very passionate speaker, Samuel Adams was more of a writer.
Patrick was just as much a doer as he was a talker, whereas Sam did a lot of talking, but it made the doers want to do. Does that make sense?
Right. He inspired people to action, which is why he is considered a founding father, because he was very influential in convincing people to resist British rule and to take up arms. Now, Samuel Adams, as I mentioned, was born in Boston, September 7th, 1722. His father was a successful merchant. He grew up well educated, and in 1748 he started his own independent newspaper, the Independent Advertiser, as a means of having a source or a platform to vocalize his opinions, a lot of which were not favorable of British rule and British taxation. Back in that day, newspaper was the medium of which information was spread the quickest. And so he got in on that, wanting to influence people with his thoughts and his writing.
His thoughts on taxation may have came from his failure as a taxman.
Outside the realm of politics, Samuel he didn't find a lot of success in other ventures. Being a tax collector, he wasn't all that great. And given back during that time, with the anti-tax sentiments many of the colonists had, there's several stories of tax collectors literally being tarred and feathered and ran out of town. So being a poor tax collector might have been in his best interest,
Right.
not to push the issue. Now, Samuel Adams, being more of a talker, not a doer, he was a great organizer, especially of people, to serve, some would argue, more towards his benefit, but others would benefit from it. One of the things he was a key founder in was the Sons of Liberty. The Sons of Liberty, for those of you who know your American history, they were the doers when it came to resisting British rule and British authority. They were kind of the wild children when it came to rebelling, and their most famous act of rebellion was the Boston Tea Party. Now, while there's no direct evidence to suggest that Samuel Adams was actually present at the Boston Tea Party, it is very well known he was one, if not the biggest organizer of the event. Like we were saying before, Will mentioned, not really a doer, but he certainly get people to spur them to action. Now, other key members who founded the Sons of Liberty are John Hancock and Paul Revere, who possibly we could hit a few episodes of them in the future. A little foreshadowing there.
Definitely.
Now, being that he was more of a man of words and not a man of action, he does have a couple of quotes that Will and I discussed at length, and it was a little hard to kind of narrow these down because they were all really, really solid, influential quotes back then and even today. In a meeting in December of 1773, they're trying to have this come together and discuss ways to find a peaceful resolution to the tea tax. And he's reported as saying this meeting can do nothing more to save the country. And a lot of people think that was kind of a signal of sorts of, all right, let's go throw all this tea in the harbor real quick. That'll show them. So, but the quote I found Samuel Adams used that has a lasting impact is, mankind are governed more by their feeling than by reason. And if that just doesn't hit the nail on the head right there.
That doesn't speak to today. I don't know what does.
I mean, just you can't help but see it in this day and age. People, well, I feel this way, or that oppresses me, or I feel attacked, and just you're more governed by your feelings than by reason. And especially in this technological age we're in, where everybody can voice how they feel, reason does seem to have taken a back seat. Anytime you have any kind of discussion on anything, it used to be, don't discuss religion or politics. Now you can't discuss anything without somebody getting their feelings hurt.
I'm surprised you didn't talk about fear being one of the main emotions governing people.
Well, fear is a feeling. I mean,
fear and paranoia.
Oh, yeah. Fear is a powerful motivator. And that's one that causes people to act and, in some cases, not react.
Or not act at all.
Like, given the current state of the world and things we've hit on in other episodes, people are afraid to leave their house. Now, while I would not advocate leaving your home if you don't have to during this pandemic, if you
want to, you leave your house.
Right, if you're afraid of leaving your house because you might get a citation or arrested or just simply harassed by law enforcement, that's where I have an issue. If you want to stay at home out of regard for your health and the health of your loved ones, by all means, please do. But if you're afraid to go out because you're told you're not supposed to, and that fear, that's where I take issue.
We all know where I stand on that.
Oh yeah, I believe we do. But it's a stance that a reasonable individual would, at the very least understand. Not one like, well, what about how people feel? I'm being a southerner growing up down here. I think every child at some point had their parent tell them, well, "I don't care how you feel."
Right.
It's like, but that's the quote for me is mankind are governed more by their feeling than by reason. And Samuel Adams had so many other good ones, and it was a very difficult task of narrowing it down
Some
to
would
one.
say
Mhm,
those in power take advantage of emotions
mhm,
to get things they wouldn't otherwise get and wouldn't otherwise be able to rationalize.
mhm.
But when all you have to do is rationalize to those that are already being irrational because of emotions, namely fear,
People.
makes it a lot easier to
Oh yeah.
take things that you have no right to take.
Oh, I'm afraid. Who's going to protect me? Oh, I will. I just need you to give up these certain liberties in order for me to do so.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language
Hmm.
are I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, and if memory serves me right, he was in the government at some point, wasn't he?
Right.
uh, but yeah, I believe. Well, you had a few quotes, Samuel Adams, that you found. Uh, I wouldn't say necessarily inspiring, but relevant today.
One of the main quotes that I love from Samuel Adams is if ye love wealth better than liberty, the tranquility of servitude better than the animated contest of freedom, go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel or arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. May your change sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen.
So, in a nutshell, go home. We don't want you here.
Like certain professions that their paycheck is more important than their oath and their honor, but then want to act like they're protecting that which they're not. I don't know what profession I might be talking about.
Or professions. People and get in power with. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of them have the best of intentions. However, we all know the saying, right? The road to hell is paved with good intention.
Oh, what's that Daniel Webster quote? Good intentions will always be pleaded for every assumption of authority. It is hardly too strong to say that the Constitution was made to guard the people against the dangers of good intentions. There are men in all ages who mean to govern well, but they all mean to govern. They promise to be good masters, but they mean to be masters.
That's the one. Like anytime you try to use a quote to kind of sum up a viewpoint of yours, how you might catch flack from internet trolls, if you will. Well, that's taken out of context. Well, to be fair, it was quoted like 300 years ago. So clearly they weren't referring to this specific instance right now in the modern day.
I mean, any quotation or any citing of anything is literally out of context.
Right. But if the meanings can be applied to a point an individual is trying to make, and it just happened, well, someone said it better than I could. Let me tell you how they summed it up. Well, then you can apply that, but you're certainly not calling on these historical figures as an absolute authority on a matter. You're just like, well, this is how I feel it summed up, and someone way back when just said it a little better than I could, so I'm going to use their words.
Someone was probably more educated or more eloquent with their words than I could be.
Yeah, it's one of those things of just clearly it, like I said, it was said a long time ago, so it doesn't directly apply to this situation, but it can be a source of information and inspiration if need be.
It's like Samuel Adams, granted, pretty much all of the founding fathers said very quote-worthy things, and they mean a lot. In or out of context does not matter. If the premise is the same as the things that they did put down into law, then it doesn't matter.
Exactly. So it's one of these things of you argue what it was meant at that particular point in history. Well, yeah, we can debate that all day, but I'm saying it in this context and telling you that this individual said it. And not everything they said did make it into law or any documentation as far as like the Constitution or things like that, but they did have a lot of insightful viewpoints that I think can still be applied today.
And there's the Sam Adams quote that actually falls right into this. How strangely will the tools of tyrant prevent the plain meaning of words?
Oh yeah, and it certainly applies to today, without a doubt.
I think we discussed that in our last episode, actually.
I think we did.
Talking about how two different groups are literally defined in a dictionary as two completely different things when they're literally the same thing, just of a different color. If you want to know more about that, go back to the last episode. We went in depth.
Went in pretty good depth on that one. But yeah, it's and I think you mentioned in the last episode as well, our favorite book to reference, 1984, and our Newspeak.
Talked about Newspeak last week too.
If you control how people discuss a topic, you can control essentially how they think about it as well. You control their viewpoint of it, such as like with inflammatory words and things such as that. You associate negatively with a certain group or action.
Sounds oddly like the national media since forever. Forever.
But it's again, that was discussed in a previous episode too, media manipulation. If you want to hear more, just backtrack a bit with us.
But yeah, old Sammy Adams was a failure at a lot of things, but man could get people's minds moving.
Oh yeah, relatively quickly too. He was quite an organizer, quite a inspiration to many. It's a true gift to be able to inspire people to action. It's one thing to tell people, certain things, like try to get them to understand a viewpoint, but to get them to physically mobilize to, take up arms in some cases, or to protest, rebel, things of that nature.
Dress up like Native Americans and throw, shipments of tea into a harbor.
It's a gift. I think he was kind of like the right guy at the right time kind of situation. A lot like with Thomas Paine and Common Sense.
Right. But we here at the Backwards History Podcast, we kind of idolize Sam Adams in at least a little bit. There's one famous quote by him, and we kind of feel like that's what we do here.
Try to.
Says it does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. Of course, men is used ambiguously. Of course. In our interpretation. In his, he probably literally meant men, but
possibly.
We feel like that may be what we're doing. I know of a few listeners who have reached out to me and said, "Hey, I had never thought about that like that until I listened to your podcast, and it made me think."
Oh, I'd love to hear that one.
and I mean, we're not the only ones. I listen to other podcasts. I listen to other points of view on purpose just to know how they think about something. And I have been wrong, and my mind has been changed on things sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Same here.
But I'm fairly unwavering when it comes to the subject of liberty and freedom. But we just want you to think. We're literally just here to get you to think for yourself. Read a book. Read an article from the opposite perspective. Do something. Do your own research. I'm not saying we're like the pinnacle of expertise on this at all. But the information that we do have that's new to whoever's listening, if any of it is new, is from doing research.
Exactly.
Not letting Fox News or CNN or MSNBC or any of those do my research for me.
Right. This is how you should think about this.
There's always two sides to every story. Or there's always three sides to every story. There's their side, and then there's their side, and the truth is usually found somewhere in the middle.
Right there in that sweet spot.
And that's our goal here, is to not only find it ourselves in a lot of instances, but convey that message to you. Convey at least the message of finding that middle ground.
That's it.
As someone on our Instagram page, while we may have been in an argument, they did say something that was very true. The world is not black and white, or in most instances, red and blue.
Right.
There are shades of gray
everywhere.
So, as always, we're just two guys with microphones.
That's it.
We're not experts. We don't want you to take us as experts. We don't want you to take anything we say as fact. We want you to do your own research, form your own opinions, trust, but verify.